Pricing merchandise, video 2. So at this point, hopefully you've spent a little bit of time on those Quizlet vocabulary terms, and you want to make sure you visit those each day. And you should have this workbook open on pricing merchandise, and it consists of 3 worksheets: basic equations, markup on cost, and markup on selling. And so we will begin with basic equations. So if you're not there, if you don't have it open, then go ahead and get that out of your Dropbox. And if you haven't watched video 1, make sure you go and do that before moving on to this one. Alright, so you have this up and running here. We're going to take a look at, I'm going to show you 3 different calculations that we need to make with these equations so that we can understand how the fundamentals of pricing work. And so what we're going to take a look at is how we calculate the selling price when the cost and the markup amount are known, and how we calculate the cost when the other 2 variables are known. And the one that, this is the one, I left this one out here, when you calculate the markup amount when we know the other 2. So it's just real simple arithmetic, but we just want to become familiar mainly with the vocabulary of what we're dealing with here. And then as we move on to markup on cost, we'll start dealing with percentages. So one of the things we can do here that is kind of nice in Excel, where we have to fill in some blanks, is that we could go ahead and format these cells so they look different than all the other cells because we're calculating unknowns here. So what I'd recommend you do is to select what we call non-contiguous cells. That means cells that are not right next to each other, they're not adjacent, is that you can select them by holding down the control key, CTRL. Hold that control key down, and then you can make multiple cells active and format those cells. So I'm going through and clicking on all the cells that I want to change the formatting to. So I'll do that again. Click on the first cell that you want to adjust, hold down the control key, and then click on the other empty cells that we are going to insert a formula. There we go. And then what we could do is move on over to the Home tab on the main menu, navigate over to Format, Format Cells, and then within this Format Cells window, we've been here before many times, done a little bit with alignment, not much with font, a little bit, we've done some border work, but now we can take a look at fill. And so what we can do is we can put a particular color. The default is no color. And so we can come in here and put some shading, or if you want to put a little color, I'm going to choose, I think I'll choose this real light. Click OK. And then the other thing I'm going to do is put a border around each cell. Make it look like it's a standalone box. And so I'll click over here on Borders and click Outside Borders. Click away and see how it looks. There we go. So now I know that I need to put a formula in each one of these cells that are highlighted. So I'll go ahead and pause at this point if you want to go ahead and get that finished. So now we can go ahead and do our calculations. So let's first take a look at calculating the selling price. So the selling price, or the retail price, the price that you would pay as a consumer, is calculated by the retailer knowing their cost and adding the markup to that cost. So cost plus markup. So in this case, very simple calculation. We will take the cost and then add the markup amount. And there's the selling price. To calculate the markup amount, that is going to be the selling price minus the cost. So the price that the store sold it to you for minus their cost will give you a calculation of the markup. Once again, another simple calculation. Selling price minus the cost. And then the other one is to calculate the cost when the selling price and the markup are known. And so to do that, I'll go ahead and do this one. We'll take the selling price minus the markup amount, and that gives the cost to the retailer. So at this point, go ahead and take the time to finish those calculations, and I'll be coming around and you can show those to me. We'll take a look at them, see how you're doing, and answer any questions that you may have. Let's move on over to the markup on cost page or worksheet. So continuing pricing merchandise, and we're going to take a look at calculating a retail price based upon the seller's cost of that product. And so here are our categories or column headings: cost, markup rate, markup amount, selling price. And I've got some definitions here, some discussion for you that you can read along with. And so markup on cost bases everything on the cost. So when we do a calculation or apply a percentage rate, we're going to consider that the whole amount, or the 100% value, is the cost. And so we're going to apply our arithmetic to that. So we have cost, we're going to have a markup rate, and we need to calculate the amount. And then with those two numbers, cost and markup, we can calculate the selling price. So here's a summary of that. Selling price, cost plus the markup amount. The markup amount is actually just calculated by multiplying the markup rate times the cost. So let's go through one. Cost times the markup rate, 15% in this case. And so the amount that this particular product is going to be marked up is $1.43. And so in order to sell that to the consumer, we're going to take the cost plus this markup amount, and there's the price on the shelf, $10.93. I'll do one more. So calculate the markup amount first. The cost multiplied by the percentage markup or the rate, and then add that markup amount to the cost. So it's a cost plus the markup amount. So go ahead and complete lines 4 through 9, and then we'll move on and take a look at another way to calculate the selling price based upon cost. Now, I know that some of you will be tempted to do a shortcut to complete these calculations. I realize that arithmetic is very easy, but the idea is to practice. So make sure you go through and do each of these calculations. Don't simply just do a fill or a copy and paste. The goal here is to practice the calculations, memorize the formulas so it becomes very familiar. And so that's why I've got you doing this 9, 10 times, so you can practice. Don't shortcut it. Now, speaking of shortcuts, we are going to take a look at a little arithmetic shortcut here for calculating the selling price. If we don't really care or need to know what the markup amount is, we can skip that step and just go right to calculating the selling price. So you'll notice that this next set of numbers, 11 through 19, these are the same values, but we're just going to do it a little different way. And so I just want you to see the arithmetic and how you can shortcut the process in order to quickly calculate the selling price of an item. So a little discussion here. The selling price can be calculated by adding, I left out a word there. Go ahead and edit this comment. The markup, sound a little better there. The selling price can be calculated by adding the markup rate to 100% and multiplying this by the cost. Well, that sounds complicated. It's not so complicated. We'll give it some practice here. Let's take a look at an example of what I'm talking about here. So we know we want to mark, let's say, the first one up by 15%. So 100% is our cost. 100% of the cost is $14.50 in this case. So what we do is we take the 100% and add the 15% above that we want to use to calculate the retail price, which gives us 115%. So how would that work? Well, here's our $14.50 times, and of course the order of operations here. We want to make sure that this arithmetic inside occurs first, so we put it in parentheses. So 100% plus 15% equals 115%. And so if we take and multiply that $14.50 times 115%, it gives us the price of $16.68. Get rid of that. Or if we convert that to a decimal, that would be 1450 times 1.0, which is another way to express 100% in decimal form, plus 0.15, which is 15%, equals $16.68. Or we can really shortcut this and just multiply 1450 times 1.15, which is 1.0 plus 0.15. So if you do that, you will see that we will calculate the same amount. There's that 1668. Let's try it and make sure it works. So we're going to calculate just the selling price and bypass calculating the markup and not having to do that additional addition calculation. So equal sign, cost times 1.15. And there it is, 1668. So it's a real quick way to calculate a retail price when we know what our markup rate is. Let's try the next one. 950 times 1.15. Let's see, let's do one more here. 25% markup. So you will take the cost, and once again, this is retail markup based on cost, times 1.25. And then we see that those numbers are the same. So give that a go. Practice the rest of these, and once again, do practice. Don't copy and paste. We already know that we know how to do that. We want to practice these calculations. I know all of you know that you will not improve your basketball skills by watching somebody else play. So you've got to do it yourself and do it each time. Don't shortcut that portion of it and copy and paste. So give it a go, give it a practice, and then we'll move on to this next section. And moving on to our last section, a little more practice with the formulas. If we know the cost, oh, and by the way, I didn't mention to you, notice that when I'm scrolling here, sorry I didn't mention that earlier. We've done this before, but you might have forgotten, so that we can keep these headers here, column heading. You just click right below it, and click on View, Freeze Panes, and then I'm going to unfreeze. So when you click, it'll look like this. And so just select Freeze Panes. And that way, it'll keep the line above or the row above locked in so you can see the heading descriptions there. So when we know the cost and the selling price, is it possible to calculate the markup rate and the markup amount? Yes, it is. So if you want to figure it out on your own, give yourself a challenge, go ahead and see if you can do it. Pause the video, give it a try, and then come back and check and see if you come up with the same answers that I have. So the first thing to do is to calculate the markup amount. We need that before we can calculate the rate. So that is going to be the selling price minus the cost. And so we had a markup amount of $10.50. So now we have this number, we can calculate the markup rate. And so remember, once again, this is the whole amount, or the 100% amount, and this is the part, or the markup amount. So we want to find out the percentage that this represents of this number. And so we're going to do a part divided by the whole. So equal sign, we take the markup amount divided by the cost, and there it is, markup of 25%. So go ahead and practice the rest of those, and we will conclude this second video at this point, and in the next video we'll take a look at markup on selling price. Thanks for watching.